Hello and welcome to Miss Hannah Loves Grammar. In this video, we'll be thinking about Volume 1 of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. In this volume, we understand the childhood and formative years of Victor Frankenstein at the start. We understand that Victor has a sister called Elizabeth that was adopted by his mother, who is called Caroline. Now, Elizabeth catches scarlet fever, and then Caroline, unfortunately, from nursing Elizabeth, catches scarlet fever also, but dies from it. On her deathbed, Caroline expresses her wish for Victor and Elizabeth to marry one day, and how this would bring her great joy. Now, in a blur and a haze of so much grief and sadness, it's very short, the time period between his mother's passing and Victor having to go to university. Now, he goes to the University of Ingolstadt, and he's inspired there by science and several scientists, and he hopes that this world of science will unlock the key to creating life itself. He is an incredibly passionate, and I would say even obsessive scientist. He digs up dead bodies and uses them to build a huge human that he wants to give life to. Now, we will call the character he creates the monster. But that name really comes from the hurt that Victor feels at how ugly and disgusting the monster is. Victor believes that the creature he's created is so grotesque that he runs away from it, physically sick from the disgust of what he has done. Now, his friend Henry Clerval helps his body to repair, and he cares for Victor. But in the time that Henry cares for Victor, the monster flees. Now, Alfonso Frankenstein writes a letter to his son, communicating that Victor's youngest brother, William, has been murdered. This is very dramatic and tragic news. And so Victor leaves everything at Ingolstadt and journeys home to Geneva. And on his way home, he sees in the Alps the monster. He's convinced it is the monster. He's also convinced that the monster is the reason for William's murder. At home in Geneva, Victor learns that the servant Justine has been accused of the murder of William. She has been accused because she was found with a photo or an image of William. So it suggests it must be her. Now, Elizabeth and Victor both visit her in prison, and they learn from her that a priest forced her to make a false confession. They seek to help her. Elizabeth tries to make a good case, but it backfires. It doesn't work out. And unfortunately, Justine is hanged. She's hung, we could say. And Victor knows it was the monster who did this. It eats him up inside that the wrong person has gone to face the ultimate punishment of the death penalty. He believes that he should have done more to defend Justine. And Victor blames himself for creating the monster. The end of this volume is that. But we understand that more horrors are to follow, and that Victor has to get away from his family, knowing what he has done by creating this monster. So what does Shelley accentuate through this volume to heighten our awareness of key themes and moments? Well, the power of learning and education is our first form of focus. Victor sees himself as eager to learn and uncover the hidden laws and secrets of heaven and earth. That manifests itself in quite obsessional behaviours. He reads with the greatest avidity, and he chose to temper to avoid a crowd. He describes himself as avoiding groups, and it suggests that he's so intense and away from his support network and family, he's choosing to be intensive in his work. He regularly stays up all night, and Shelley echoes this idea of bad things happening in the night, which is a definite motif of the Gothic, through his working habits through the night. Whilst his successes bring him great esteem and admiration, it is clear that Victor's ambitions have consequences that are negative. He later calls his ambitions a selfish pursuit, especially in the wake of the monster. A consequence of Victor's obsessions is the monster himself, but it's the rejection of the monster that is the most manifest thing within this whole volume. It's such a despicable description. The beauty of the dream vanished and the breathless horror and disgust filled my heart. Victor here fails to care for the way this creature should be treated and fails to understand that he has a duty of care for having created this thing. The description that we have of the monster is purely on physical terms, but it's also important for us to realise that for Victor, there's so many abstract nouns here of disgrace. There's horror and disgust. He is, in many ways, suffering because he cannot believe that something bad could come from what he's created. In this moment, I hope many a reader feels sympathy for the monster, being left as a secret that his creator is ashamed of. It's important for us to make a decision in this moment about how we feel towards Victor Frankenstein. Is his arrogance getting the better of him? Should he care more because he created this thing? Or should he, in fact, accept that there will be further consequences for failing to look after this thing in its most primitive state? The final focal point of this volume is that of crime and injustice. These themes are launched with huge focus by the murder of William and Justine's incredibly corrupt trial. Shelley is drawing attention here to the fact that the legal system is corrupt. It's described as a mockery of justice. The judges decide pretty early that Justine is guilty. She is depicted, in fact, as a monster. At the end of the volume, Victor realises, not in deed, but in effect, he was the true murderer. Though he sees justice as seeking revenge on the monster's crimes and malice, we understand that he is in part responsible for the action of what's happened. And by the end of this whole volume, 2 murders have already happened. One intentionally, in the form of the monster, and the other just along the way by society who judged the wrong person. So what should our takeaways be from Volume 1 of Frankenstein by Mary Shelley? Well, we're introduced to Victor Frankenstein's childhood, to his formative memories and his development into adult life. We learn of Victor's fixations on old scientific theories and their possibilities. We meet Victor's friend, Henry Clerval, who also has brave ambitions, much like Victor, and as we've already seen in the letters from Captain Robert Walton. We learn that Victor lost his mother, and we wonder if that has had an impact on him wanting to understand the key to life and how to create it. But he is becoming more and more isolated and obsessed by his work. He creates the monster, though this experiment is definitely marked by both fear, anxiety, and even paranoia. Shelley uses this volume to critique humanity in all ways, not just the creation of new things and the possibilities or dangers of playing God, but the justice system that allows Justine to hang for the crime that she didn't commit. The monster is actually responsible for 2 deaths by the end of this volume. And yet, the creator is beginning to realise that he has a responsibility, that his responsibility should have been to care for the monster. Unfortunately, that isn't quite how Victor sees it. He sees his job now to avenge the monster, to create animosity and kick back. Our job as readers is to decide who should get our sympathy. Does the monster get a chance to know any better? Surely from his upbringing, Victor should have a sense of what the right thing was to do. Why not subscribe to Miss Hannah Loves Grammar for all things English, literary and grammatical?